Hi, and welcome back to Agudath Shalom's This Week in Jewish History. As we prepare to inaugurate a new president, this week would be an opportune time to look back at some moments of inspiration from previous presidential inaugurations and the roles Jews have played in them. I would like us to look at some of the blessings and benedictions rabbis and others have offered at various presidential inaugurations. Going back to our earliest history as a nation, upon the inauguration of George Washington as president in 1789, Kahal Kadosh Beit Shalom, a congregation in Richmond, Virginia, wrote an elaborate prayer blessing the new president. On the right side of your screens, you can see a copy of the prayer, and if you look carefully at some of the bolded type, you can see the downwards acrostic spelling the name Washington in Hebrew. It seems that for many years, Jewish clergy were not asked to offer benedictions at presidential inaugurations. And so fast-forwarding to the inauguration of President Harry Truman in 1949, Rabbi Samuel Thurman of United Hebrew Congregation in St. Louis, Missouri, was called upon to offer words of blessing. President Truman and Rabbi Thurman had been in correspondence previously, primarily regarding the president's support for the young state of Israel. You can see a letter on the bottom from Rabbi Thurman to President Truman regarding this matter. And now, at the inauguration, turning to a prosperous, victorious post-World War II America, Rabbi Thurman turned to God, declaring that by thy bounty we have become rich and mighty among the nations of the world, and then asking him, O Lord, make us more worthy of all thy blessings. In 1957, upon the second inauguration of President Dwight Eisenhower, Rabbi Louis Finkelstein, then Chancellor of the Jewish Theological Seminary, turned to God in the midst of the Cold War and asked that do thou fulfill in their days and in ours thy promise to the prophets, that thou wilt cause fear of thee to enter the hearts of all thy creatures, so that mankind may become one society, dedicated with complete heart to performance of thy will. President John F. Kennedy took office in 1961 with a nation still very much gripped by the Cold War with the Soviet Union. The Jewish clergyman called upon to bless the president and the country that year was Rabbi Dr. Nelson Glick, noted archaeologist and president of Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati. Rabbi Glick asked specifically that God give the new President Kennedy the wisdom to guide his nation in those difficult times. O thou, he started, who art the source of all life, quicken his President Kennedy's heart, always with the awareness of thy presence, and especially in the lonely moments of fateful decisions which may be his to make for us and our world. Rabbi Glick concluded with the traditional Jewish priestly blessing, Yevarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Hashem panav elecha v'chuneka, Yisa Hashem panav elecha, v'yasem lecha shalom. And while the words of these rabbis and prominent Jewish leaders are certainly inspiring, I believe the most profoundly religious message delivered at an inauguration was by President Lincoln himself in his second inaugural address. Lincoln, speaking just a few months before his assassination, addressed a war-weary nation, but one that knew that the terrible Civil War was coming to a close. And this was perhaps not more evident in the fact that groups of African American soldiers marched in Lincoln's inaugural procession, a picture of which you can see on your screens. And in that inaugural address in 1865, Lincoln turned to the crowd, and while the circumstances are not nearly as dramatic as in 1865, he delivered a message that, in my opinion, resonates ever so strongly this year. He began, each side looked for an easier triumph, and a result less fundamental and astounding. Both read the same Bible and pray to the same God, and each invokes his aid against the other. It may seem strange that any men should dare to ask a just God's assistance in wringing their bread from the sweat of other men's faces, But let us judge not, that we be not judged. The prayers of both cannot be answered. That of neither has been answered fully. And then, with an incredibly inspiring conclusion, Lincoln charged the nation with the true task ahead. With malice towards none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations.